Good evening. Welcome to the stream. No, it's not running slow or something like that. I hope everybody's well. Welcome to the stream. We have a double bill tonight. So, yeah. Creepshow 2 and The Deadly Spawn. We're going to start off with Creepshow 2, so we won't wait too long because we've got about 3 hours worth of films to get through. But yeah, I see there's a lot of chat going on. People talking about Creepshow 3, and maybe we'll talk about that as we watch Creepshow 2 as well a little bit. I've seen it once, and it was about 5 years ago, I think, something like that. But yeah. Not been to see Halloween Ends. I can't be asked with Halloween, the movies. The original, yeah. The second one, yeah, it's a poor sequel to it's poor compared to the first one, but it's fine. The third one, great as a standalone movie. Surprised the fuck out of people, just because it was completely like, there's no Michael Myers, and everybody went boo at the time. But it's turned out to be something of a classic. Everything after that pretty much can go fuck itself as far as I'm concerned. I think the first one of this new series was reasonable. I did see that at the cinema. I haven't seen any of the others. But over and above that, yeah. The weird thing is the Rob Zombie stuff. You know, everybody's going, oh, it don't look so bad now. You go, no, yeah, it's still just as shit as it was back in the first watch it. At least in my opinion. Some people are massive fans of it. And big fans of Rob Zombie himself. I cannot see why, but to each their own, I guess. As for that abortion-looking Addams Family thing, good God. I want to like Rob Zombie so much. I really do. I really, really do genuinely want to love his stuff. But no, he's for all the bitching Quentin Tarantino gets about copying stuff. Rob Zombie does exactly the same, but he does it more than a kind of like Eli Roth kind of thing. Just like the enthusiastic puppy, which seems all kind of cute for the first 5 minutes, but then rapidly shits on the floor and pisses down your leg. It gets a little tiresome. Hey, hello Gary. Good to see you. Yeah, so I got my new mount yesterday for my telescope. Took a bit longer to come than I thought it was going to. But my God, it really does make a huge difference. That thing is just comparatively rock solid. Now I can adjust the position of the telescope without having to wait for like 20 seconds for it to stop kind of bouncing. That thing's solid. It's amazing. It fucking weighs a ton though. It's not even the biggest one that's out there. But it really did help last night because I managed to get the scope out last night and had a bit of a shot at Jupiter very quickly in between before the clouds started rolling in, and got quite a nice little shot of Jupiter and a couple of the moons. So it's very promising. Once I get the go-to unit for it, then I'll be well sorted, because then I can just point it and make very, very few adjustments and spend all my time concentrating on the photography, which would be very, very nice. John's always had a bit of a soft spot. Of course you have, John. You've got a soft spot for fucking everything, mate. John's just done a video, actually. He's been very, very busy producing videos. He's got a couple of... he's got a channel with an EP on. It's very, very good. I highly recommend. If someone reminds me, I'll make sure that I kind of mirror it on my Facebook or something like that. But he's done a couple of really good videos lately. Just absolutely go check out John Rennie's channel. It's brilliant. Dear, oh dear. How was your birthday? Hi. Oh, Kerry's birthday. Yes, it was Kerry's birthday. Happy birthday to Kerry. Not as old as me. But yeah, John's got a soft spot for zombies, Halloween too. So, I think you've got a good point there, John. Visually, he's an interesting director. and I've always said that. I think visually he has an interesting style. He's just not very good with characters and writing, unfortunately. At least I don't think so. Photo of Jupiter was awesome. Oh, thank you, Adam. It's not bad. I mean, it is, there's a long way to go with that stuff. But considering that was pretty much a single shot, there's no stacking or anything involved with that shot. So that's a single shot with a little bit of post, just to up the contrast. And I had to do some work to get the two moons that were there to kind of come out, because you expose for the planet, and the planet is incredibly bright, and the moons are very dim in comparison. So by the time you get the planet right, the moons are kind of completely faded into the background. But but thank you. I just agree with your comments, Glenn. John's channel is awesome, and also check it out. Yeah, he's got a very wonderful approach to talking about film. So please go. And if you're interested in that kind of film appreciation and kind of study of the techniques and all that kind of stuff, John's channel is really good. It's not so much it's not a review channel, but he kind of like does sort of film studies type stuff and film appreciation type stuff. It's excellent. And John surprised the hell out of me when he kind of put up his link on his music channel, and because he's got one heck of a voice. I was genuinely shocked that was, kind of like that he was a singer at all. I had no idea he had any aspirations in that way. Multi-talented man. What's on your Halloween? Oh, yes, that's a Kerry. Right, okay, folks. So we don't hang around too long. Get everybody onto the Creepshow 2 link, which should be the first link in the description. Get yourselves all lined up, ready to go, and we will get going in a few minutes. Last night I had the original Poltergeist. Oh yeah, that's a fun film. It's a weird one in some respects. A lot of people kind of say it's a very Spielberg film, and there is, there is Spielberg in there, but that film always felt much more like a Tobe Hooper film visually, and the kind of like sort of the texture of the film is kind of how he does it. That sort of very high contrast kind of colours and all that kind of stuff. It's a sort of nightmarish comic book kind of feel to a lot of it, but then it has that sort of touch of whimsy, which is the Steven Spielberg kind of end of things. But that's one of the things I always admired about Steven Spielberg, was his ability to really kind of take all that sort of childish wonder and the whimsy and all that kind of stuff, and then also inject real drama and horror into some of the situations in his films. For all the bitching I do about Hollywood filmmakers and directors, mostly studios to be fair, Steven Spielberg, for a mainstream director, has for the most part been a very interesting and adventurous director with a real passion for the story and the characters, and that's what my appreciation in film tends to kind of sit in, rather than special effects and all that kind of stuff. Although I do appreciate a good special effect. Iris says, got CS2 lined up on my TV. Excellent. We will get going in just a couple of minutes. I thought they both bought something to Poltergeist. Yes, they did. And I think Steven Spielberg, if I'm not wrong, has always said it was Tobe Hooper's movie. But yes, there's a little bit of kind of his stuff sort of in there. I mean, he's kind of senior in the filmmaking sort of stuff. So yes, there would have been a certain amount of that. Especially, I think, considering the sort of films that Tobe Hooper was coming off of, and then going into a film like that. I think Steven Spielberg's contributions, apart from anything else, really did sort of make the film a more accessible thing than it could have. Than it might have been if it had been pure Tobe Hooper. But that would have been kind of interesting to see a full-blooded horror from that film. Kerry's going to sign off. We'll message you in a week. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, folks. Let's get going. So, if you stand by your beds, we will get going on the count of 5 and go on go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Now, I used to have this years ago on VHS. I think it was actually the first of the Creepshow films that I watched. And I picked this up second hand. Hello, John. I picked it up second hand on like a kind of X-Rental big box. God, I miss the X-Rentals. There was always something about those old video stores. I remember being so excited going into those, and almost every time you went in there was just this walls of films. And we had about 3 video stores in town, at least in the centre of town, at one point. And they were really kind of friendly little affairs as well, because I remember going to buy Dawn of the Dead when it finally got an official re-release on VHS. Of course, it was a cut version and all that kind of stuff, but yeah. And it ended up costing me 50 quid back then. It's very chilled, isn't he, about all of the about the somewhat ghoulish character speaking to her. Some people complain about the animation on this. It doesn't feel like the first one. It does feel somewhat different, this one, to the first one. The first one feels much more cohesively like a comic book, and that's everything from the kind of filming style. Each segment didn't deviate from the others in terms of kind of like qualities and tones and just the look, as much as this one kind of does. I mean, I a lot of people kind of are very die-hard for the first one. I actually do really like this this sequel. Yeah, Simon, we are at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Tom Savini as the creep. Now, I'm not sure what George Romero was doing, that he couldn't direct this, or whether he just didn't want to. But yeah, I guess in some ways you can sort of feel the premise getting a little overstretched within, with this one and the first one back to back. The third one feels very different. It tries to do some of the stuff of this to kind of tie it in. You know what? Actually, just looking at the music credit, I was going. It's all very Rick Wakeman. I forgot that he actually did this, because it does feel like the soundtrack to The Burning, somewhat. Tom Savini was in part 1 and as one of the garbage men. Yes, Tom Savini always kind of like it gets a little cameo in here or there. I actually, one of his favourite roles that I've seen him in is in Knight Riders as Morgan. I think he does such a wonderful job on that. He's just got that kind of characteristic sort of Tom Savini sort of swagger to the character. It's being very playful with it in that. Romero was leaving his company Laurel and Gevista Gornick to make. Okay. See, I don't think this is a particularly, it's not an amazing piece of direction within this film, but it's not bad either. It's got some points in it which that kind of really does shine, but some parts, particularly this first story. In fact, I'm glad they actually put this story in. It's Dexter Main. Thank you. I'm glad that they put this story in first, because it's one of the odder ones within the entire thing. Now, it was kind of go a little bit sort of backwards and forwards on this particular story, because it is a little bit of an odd one. But I think there is I think it's because the emotional sort of end of it is very different to the other two. It feels more like a drama than it does a horror to an extent. But it's I think the actors in it really do kind of sell it. Always thought the first story was a little goofy but fun. That's one way to look at it. I don't mean that in a condescending way. You'll kind of get different things from these stories. But it does work hard to give you an emotional connection with these characters, and I think for the most part he does that well. The bad guys come off more as the goofier end of the kind of Creepshow sort of characters by some distance, for sure. From what I've read, they had a bad breakup, and Gornick felt like Romero left him high and dry at the company. I think it's solid direction. He pretty much did Dark Side after this for TV. Yeah, it's fair enough. I think direction-wise, I mean, maybe, yeah, you should. It's the director, but I think when it comes to, there's a little inconsistency. It's the only thing I would say within the film. Not that it's a game breaker by any means. As sequels go, I think it's a pretty worthy effort. I don't think it's bad by any means. Not any part of it. Although the bad guy characters in this particular story do kind of push it to the limit. Because you got this kind of like real sort of almost syrupy nostalgia kind of thing going on here. It's sort of almost melodramatic kind of thing. And it's like and then it shifts so wildly, and I just never been quite 100% on board with how fast and how hard it does that. Consider George Kennedy a bit of a legend, always seemed like a very endearing character. He's a very charismatic man. and he could do the bad guy kind of stuff when he wanted to, and it's always a real surprise when he does. But yeah, I mean, he's just like everyone's grandpa, isn't he? You know what I mean? Apparently, one of the unfinished stories for this film, "The Cat from Hell," was adapted from an adapted for an episode of Tales from the Dark Side. Yeah, I think something like that happened on a few occasions, didn't it? I mean, certainly one of the stories in this was one that wasn't included in the first Creepshow, and I think it was the last one. I think it was The Hitchhiker. I love this movie. I just lost the stylization, like the crazy colours and background to the original. Yeah, it does feel very different, doesn't it, in that respect? It's a little bit kind of less extreme visually. I think that's really reflected even in the animation, because the animation in it is a point of contention for some. I don't think it's bad. It's just it's a little kind of it's more like a European animated film kind of thing than it is a comic book, if you know what I mean. But yeah, George Kennedy definitely a bit of a legend. And they both are in this, you know, as a couple, they do feel like very real. Although, like, it's kind of a heightened sort of melodramatic kind of thing, but they really do sell those characters as being very lovely people, you know, very honest, real people. Um, and what's going to happen, it's important that they actually do that. And it's why I always so often bang on about how important characterization is, and that's one of the reasons I struggle with Rob Zombie's stuff, is that when you care for the characters, the impact is just so much higher. Because you can tear bodies asunder, left, right, and centre, but it's just not that interesting after a while once you've seen a few of these things happen. It's kind of like watching the zombies get kind of chopped up in Dawn of the Dead. You don't get an emotional impact with them, but you do when one of the main characters dies. Chief Sitting Bull says no credit. How dear. One of the charming things about this is it's like with this scene, it sets up um, an interesting relationship, a very respectful relationship between these people, which contrasts so kind of wildly with the bad guys in here who are anything other than respectful. It kind of lays it on a bit thick, but it's still, you know, it's more bonding with these characters, you know, because now we see that, you know, they're not just it's not just us that like them, it's the town that they respect him enough not to um, uh, force them to be kind of giving them charity all the time. Oh, that's a nice one, Machiavelli. So Creepshow 3 really was... I've got it somewhere, I swear. I haven't been able to find it for a while, but I'm going to have to watch it again. What I would say about it, it isn't a patch on the first two in many respects, but if you go into it and don't demand it to be anything like Creepshow, particularly, then it's okay. Uh, I've certainly had worse viewing experiences, but a lot of people go with very high expectations because of their attachment to the first two, or the first one at the very least. And yeah, it's not as good as either of these, but it's not the worst thing on the planet either. It felt a bit forced into the Creepshow format, is what I think is the best way to describe it. Fun fact, real cigar store Native American statues are probably worth more than everything in the shop. Probably, yes. So, I mean, if they were carved wood and all that kind of stuff, it's a hell of a bit of craftsmanship. It's a real shift in the feel of the film, isn't there? Because I mean, it's clearly daylight out when they just walked in, and now it feels like it's more like it's about 9 o'clock at night. Apparently, this car genuinely overheated in the Arizona sun. That isn't special effects coming from under the bonnet. Jesus. Somebody's been watching Day of the Dead. Love to have seen Dark Side in the cinema. Wore out that VHS of that movie. Great fun, good screenplay from Romero. You know what? I don't think I've seen Tales from the Dark Side. I could be wrong, but I don't think I've seen it. I know, sacrilege. Surely I've seen everything. It's a massive change, though, isn't it? Like I was saying, it's just it's gone from normality to this kind of the more eccentric parts of the original Creepshow kind of feel. It's a real charmer, isn't he? I'm not sure if we should be watching this because he's red facing it, isn't he, in this? Remember seeing a few episodes of Tales from the Dark Side on TV late night. I didn't think it was that great, to be honest. I imagine the TV series is probably a little all over the place. Things usually are. Apparently, Gornick was pushing the thing across the car across the road for most shots. I think they do go a little over the top with the egotism of this guy, don't they? Yeah, I mean, it's a character trait and it kind of explains a bit of what he's like. I guess you could read in a whole sort of trying to escape from Dolesville sort of stuff, the poverty of the town. But It's hardly redeeming for this character. It's one of those shots where it does actually feel like a set, doesn't it? Oh, oh. He's a hell of a film critic, isn't he? Well, this bitch kind of cuts his hair off and makes him all weak. Takes away his superpowers. A real cultural genius, isn't he? Anybody remember the Friday the 13th TV show? Had nothing to do with Jason. I heard of it. I never did see it. And I'm not surprised it had nothing to do with Jason, to be honest with you. I think didn't Freddy's Nightmares or whatever, that had very little to do with it. It was kind of like the host, essentially. Sort of like the TV equivalent of the Hellraiser sequels. I think I saw something about somebody on Facebook said they were going to go watch Dawn of the Dead at the cinema in 3D or something like that. Unless I misread it, it was a bit like, why? Bit of a hair trigger on that gun, apparently. I have to say that it is one of the more kind of like shocking moments in these kind of films. But that effect, that blood effect, was just not over the top. Which makes it a little bit more disturbing to me. And I think the whole thing, the killings are relatively low key for what you'd expect in a film like this. But I think the film's better for it. Yeah, this guy's been in a lot of stuff. Can't leave witnesses behind, can you? That guy's son Hal Holbrook, who was in the first film. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, Erie, Indiana. Yeah, I sort of vaguely remember. I wasn't really watching kids' TV at that time, but I do remember seeing little bits and pieces of it. He's really not a smart guy, is he? It's like, you've just done that. Why make a load more noise and bring attention to yourself? He's got wood for revenge. And the soundtrack on this, it occasionally feels a bit like Day of the Dead. And Rick Wakeman was really good with soundtracks, in my opinion. Yep, we've got to give the Chief a good chance, good time to catch up with you. I almost want to see him sort of get to Hollywood before the Chief Woodenhead sort of turns up and slaughters him around movie studios and things like that. It's a fine figure of a man. I think this is partly kind of one of those scenes where what I said earlier about the slight inconsistencies in the direction, because this feels so weird in comparison with everything else that's sort of going on. And this moment sort of feels much more like the first film. Iron Maiden poster. If he did make it to Hollywood, got to wonder how his career would have gone. Oh, with that hair? It's very, very convinced his hair is going to get him paid in ladies, he says. Wah, 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 Richard. Oh no, the douchemobile's been beaten up. He went splat. And the second kill, actually, yeah, I mean, the second kill particularly always feels a little off on this particular story. Like, it kind of shies away from showing anything. Not that that's a problem, generally speaking, but it just feels a little out of place, considering you got Tom Savini on the team. Shouldn't shoot the antique. I love the psycho sting on the soundtrack. That just tickles me a little bit every time. As to be said, though, I mean, this story almost could do with being a bit longer by about 5 or 10 minutes. Just and it's weird saying it to some degree, but that the revenge bit with Chief Woodenhead going after him is incredibly quick. It's done in no time whatsoever. It's a huge amount of build up, and then it's suddenly kind of bang. It's pretty much over and done with. Oh, Chief Woodenhead, what have you done? You ever tried setting light to something like that? Not that I have, obviously, but big ass chunk of wood, it's actually very difficult to set light to. Savini just did the bullet holes on the Hitcher, I believe, from DVD commentary. The rest was a younger team. I think he took a step back to prepare for his role. Yeah, fair enough. But even so, you sort of go, you got Tom Savini around. I'm sure he could have come up with some ideas and go, run with it, lads. Terrible joke. Just chuck petrol at it first, it'll burn real easy then. This kid definitely doesn't have murderous intent. Beer. Beer right back. I instantly hate these characters. It is almost Halloween. Do you like my costume, by the way? Think I read the raft before I saw this. Oh, really? Okay. What we're talking about, I've just arrived. Well, we just started the second of the stories of Creepshow 2, The Raft. But scroll up if you want to see what's been chatted about. This segment is awesome. I do like the second and the third feel more like Creepshow stories to me. They do a good job of making this a lot less guilty to watch, if you know what I mean. Because they're solidly shitty characters. Don't take drugs, kids. As soon as the nice kid has a puff, that's it. Yeah. From what I understand, this was freezing fucking cold for these young actors. I love the way they make it sound like it's a legendary thing. You know, it's a real rites of passage kind of thing. This raft that's in the middle of fuck knows where. Suddenly everybody's got to do it. And apparently they weren't kidding about that either. It was really fucking cold, like I say. You were a fan of Halloween 3 until you saw Halloween... I wasn't a fan of Halloween 3 until you saw Halloween Ends. I've heard very mixed responses to it. As much as you hate the characters, you've got to admire the actors in this, because quite frankly, they're really putting themselves through it. Really didn't like Halloween 3 at first, but it's pretty cool. It's getting over the expectation of seeing a film called Halloween that has very little to do with the rest of Halloween series, I guess, apart from anything else. And it is it's a little goofy looking in some respects with the incredibly low budget that they had, but it's a really cool film. Remember thinking the battery on that car lasts a while. They don't make them that used to. Oh, well, you said Halloween 3 at first. Just read what's there. You've got a pair of speedos just like that. Oh my god! I did not need to know that, John. There's a mental image. I just, love you, mate, but you in teeny tiny little yellow speeders is probably a little much for me. I kind of get the feeling Stephen King's probably more suited towards shorter stories these days. He tends to, with the big stories, he tends to recycle a lot of ideas, and he has his Stephen King tropes, which is fine. But yeah, when you've seen him like 6 times, then with a short story, he gets his little ideas that he has, and he has great ideas, and can make it, a lot breezier, fresher. Giant jellyfish are silly. Much prefer giant octopuses. We won't go into Rob Zombie's Halloween movies. We had a little chat about that earlier, but yeah, not a massive fan. Some of the guys here are, but not for me. Thank you very much. Is Rob Zombie in general as a filmmaker. Love his music. I love the fact that she went swimming out there in a bloody cardigan. It's like, why wouldn't you take that off before? Devil's Reject was pretty much his only decent film, though. Free from Hell wasn't bad. I didn't like either of them, personally. Devil's Rejects was barely viewable to me. And it's the characters. I just don't like the characters. There's just not a single character in that entire film that I can enjoy. And I've always found Rob Zombie is as much of a musical kind of guy he is. He has a bit of a tough time connecting the kind of music that he knows and loves, and what should actually be in the film. And the one thing that was always I always use as an argument was the free bird at the end of Devil's Rejects. Yeah, because Freebird at the end of that was just utterly out there. It just as why is it in that bit there? Jesus, this is one of those moments. It's like, it's a very simple story, this, and I think that's what makes it very, very effective. Very simple story. You don't need to know much about what's going on. There's this thing out there. What is always a surprise is that character that gets it first, because you'd expect her to be one of the final survivors. The Monsters movie looks like it was created by the Nostalgia Critic 5 years ago. Ouch! It's not great, is it, really? I mean, I can sort of see partly what you was going for, but to be honest, not that I would have ever had much interest in the Monsters anyway. Defend some of Rob Zombie movies, but tried to watch recent Monsters. 10 minutes in, I realised I only have so long to live and went to do something else. Cinema Snob's old videos are funny as hell. Yeah, yeah. I think the death of Channel Awesome really kind of soured an awful lot of um, those characters that were in it, the creators that were in it. Unfortunately for me, a little bit of that sort of rubbed off on Cinema Snob as well. Although I still do watch Kyle Calgren's stuff when he does it. He's very occasional, but fantastic film critic. I'll give the effects guys their due, particularly on this part of the film. It is wonderfully grim. Oh, it's that moment that leg comes up and just kicks himself in the face. What happened to Channel Awesome? Oh, Jesus Christ. It's a long story, but it was a real fucking mess. It was very, very poor management. See, at this point, what they should do is just swim in different directions, and then at least one of them should make it. In fact, they should have done that while they was digesting old Frat Boy. Ed French Everett did Blood Rage. That movie lives up to its name. How Berger did most of the effects Ed French got in a huff with the director whilst filming this scene and stormed off. Oh dear. You're in the middle of nowhere. What is the chance? I know, just go like, just stand there going, ooh, ooh, look, it's eating our friend. So fucking think, run or swim. Ed French was supposed to be that creep at the start of the film, but because he left, Tom Savini did the role. So he was the stand-in creep. Excuse me. So even out his Camp Crystal Lake just down the way. No, it keeps you warmer. Sex. The Ultimate Halloween Watch 92 Ghost Watch. Oh yeah, I do remember watching it back in the day. It has quite a cult following these days, isn't it? I often think how I would do in horror movies. I had a plan of how to block off work at the arts theatre if somebody. Okay. Not sure I would hole up in the arts theatre, but yeah. Much sooner find a supermarket. And this is where this guy gets just a little bit fruity. Considering he's supposed to be kind of one of the slightly less douchey of the lads. It's like... Oil slick had 2 divers beneath it. Pretty simple but effective. Okay. Strange sex scene, but if you're gonna go, I'd say it's not quite sex. It's probably on the wrong side of that kind of thing. It's a little bit kind of like non-consensual. So, molested and eaten all in the same morning. That's a bad day. You've wasted so much time, man. There's a passion killer. Join Watch Ghost Back. Join Watch Ghost Watch Bite Back on YouTube. That's hilarious. Room full of people complaining about Ghost Watch film. They were well mad. Yeah, there was a hell of a lot of complaints. I think it ranks up there with one of the most complained about programmes in BBC history. Collector's edition of Ghost Watch has been released by 101 Films on Blu-ray. Lots of extras. I do have Ghost Watch on DVD. Don't think it's a particularly special edition, but it does have another program on there as well. Look out, Bin Bag Island. Yes. Remember seeing Ghost Watch? I know it was meant to be a drama, but it was played so straight. I wondered if I misread the paper, and then it got over the top at the end. You knew it was a spoof. But it still sort of dragged you in. That ending really sort of nailed it. Because I mean, I was very much the same. I wasn't kind of sitting there thinking, "God, this is real." But by the end of it, I was drawn into the whole kind of atmosphere of it. It's really good. Oh God, it's the bullies from it. The ending ripped off The Exorcist and Amityville. Anyone still thought it was real at that point was a gullible prat. Well, did it really kind of The Exorcist? Nobody got thrown out of a window, did they? Is it a double with Nigel Kills the Stone Tape? I can't honestly remember. It'll be up there somewhere, but punched in the balls. Cheap shot. A little bit of a fruity fella, isn't he? He definitely wants Billy's ass. And for me, it was Craig Charles, Sarah Green playing themselves, knowing them from Red Dwarf and going live. That was one of the things that really kind of caught a lot of people out, because they weren't expecting them people to be doing what they were doing. Yeah, it's up there somewhere. I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been any kind of references, or at least kind of, lifts from that sort of thing, but I don't think it was the first or only film it's ever kind of had demonic possession. But, yeah, fair enough. See where you're coming from. Did you ever play the infamous Deadly Premonition? No, I don't think I did. Up to something. Though watching it again a few years ago, the young actors had terrible stage school BBC accent. Okay. Still can't believe people thought Ghostwatch was real after seeing how ridiculous the ending was. I think it's because it caught a load of people by surprise. I've always maintained that if you people can fall for the silliest things. If you see those kind of hidden camera type things, as a for instance, people go, "Oh, how could he believe that? This, that, or the other." It's when you're not expecting it, you accept a lot at face value, and that's pretty much what Ghostwatch did to people. I think, especially. They're sort of disarmed by the fact that it was Michael Parkinson and Sarah Green and kind of like Craig Charles and all of the others, that they were very recognisable, friendly, family-friendly kind of faces. So a lot of people were not expecting it to go places that it did. And it really kind of built things up at such a sort of slow level. So it didn't go from 0 to 90, which you would sort of go, yes, that's ridiculous. But it just added little bits and pieces. So I think it was very skillfully written in that kind of sense. It was things like, it had the real BBC call-in number, all that kind of stuff. So if you weren't aware of the fact that, explicitly aware of the fact that it was a drama and not a kind of piece of reality TV, which there wasn't a heck of a lot of at the time, then I can see why people were suckered in. Nightmares for days from it, yeah, a lot of people did. I found it spooky, but at the end, I thought the ending really kind of nailed it nicely. But yeah, God says he gave me nightmares. Excuse me. Just realised 30th anniversary of Ghostwatch this year. Yes, I believe it is. Yeah, it did look like a real show. That was the thing, wasn't it? It was very authentic looking. The one thing that really kind of let it down was the expert in the studio. I thought her performance was a little bit kind of janky. Adam. People tried an awful lot of stuff, didn't they? Never forget hearing about the letter of complaint from the wife of a soldier that got me. As an adult, it was ludicrous, but as a kid, wow. They do try a little too hard in some respects, don't they, to kind of make her the bad guy in this, in terms of she's cheating on her husband as well. It's a little bit too much of a detail. I guess there's a motivation there. Too old to be scared by ghost watchers, but years earlier when that train was heading for the screen in my local cinema. I haven't watched the BBC in years, so I wouldn't know if they were quote-unquote woke or not. And quite frankly, the word woke is so overused. It's just become meaningless. I would say back in the day, this story really scared me. I had nightmares. Loved it. It's it is kind of a fun one. Doesn't seem like the safest place on the road to be kind of just piling up loads of cars, because they're on a fairly steep corner. Stephen King cameo, yep. Alien shit. Conniving bitch. Oh, but you don't know that. Was this in King Age? I don't know what that means. I missed that bit of the comment. Bring back my language, love thy neighbour, until death do our part. Do we part? They were products of their time. Not a massive one for sort of like rewriting the films and stuff of the past and making them kind of fit now necessarily, but holding on to that stuff and kind of like not moving with the times a little, at least a little bit, just seems ill-advised to me. It's just such a great idea, isn't it, for a story that's having just this mistake, this horrible mistake that you kind of tried to bury, never going away. It's always coming after you. I think this was firmly made in the era of King's high cocaine use. Yeah, he had a real problem for a while, didn't he? Seems unnecessarily cruel. And quite frankly, that sunroof mechanism's probably not up to any kind of safety standards, because it shouldn't be kind of trapping you that hard. Doesn't seem the most well advised kind of detour, does it? I mean, I know what she's trying to do and all, but let's face it, if you tried to do that in real life, you'd have been in a ditch like an hour ago. He was high on coke, but it gave us maximum overdrive. Maybe it won't hit. Just guessing. Glad King got over it, but overdrive is such a pleasure to watch for me. Yeah, maximum overdrive has its fun. It doesn't showcase Stephen King's directorial skills particularly well, but it's a fun film nonetheless. Yeah. I do love Maximum Overdrive. It's just the adage cocaine is a hell of a drug in movie form. And yes, of course, that AC/DC score is just incredible. I don't think the film would have been half as good without that soundtrack. I do have that somewhere. I'll have to dig it out and have a listen. Get it on CD somewhere. He's eminently polite, isn't he? He's insistent on being thankful. Thanks for the bullet. Thanks for the bullet. The car won't die, yeah. Hitchhiker needs to be given better dialogue than just thanks for the ride, lady. I can see why they went with just keeping it very simple. If they'd kind of given him loads of puns and shit like that, it'd have ended up like Freddy Krueger in the kind of like, later films. For some that'd be great, but it would hardly be a very threatening thing. But yeah, maybe some extra stuff to say if it's not too kind of hammy. Toss him in a wood chipper. It's his Fargo. bridge scene at the beginning of Maximum Overdrive must have been hard to film. They just had to pay right people the right amount of money, didn't they? Stephen King's little cameo in it. This machine just called me an asshole. Thanks for the dye. Thanks for the dye, lady. I love that with the sign. That's just perfect. I think it's actually a really quite nicely done, sort of unstoppable kind of killer type thing. And it's interesting that, of course, you're on his side. You're not on her side. Why would you be? So, I think all in all, it sort of works out quite nicely with this story that the force of revenge is actually the person that should be getting it in this case. Where did he come from? He was left in the road. He hitchhiked. And the car's still going. I'm not sure which is more unkillable, the bloody car or the hitchhiker. More relentless than Rutger Hauer, yes. I mean, it's a similar kind of vibe in some respect, isn't it, with the story? At least C. Thomas Howell's character wasn't quite the complete bastard that this woman is. But the funny thing is, as much of a bastard as she is, you sort of understand there is that kind of drive if you fuck up so bad that you don't want to face the consequences, or you can't imagine being able to face the consequences. So as awful as what she did is, you do also sort of it's also an understandable, relatable thing to some extent. So in that respect, she's nicely written. I hit a tree 4 miles into the wood. She just got lucky. She was speeding a little bit, hit a patch of ice, went about half a mile or so, or a mile into the woods, and hit a tree. And she made it all up in her own head, all that stuff. Sounds plausible. Mercedes dealership winter when she goes in for repairs. Yeah, it's a little bit of work to be done there. Might need to ding a couple of those panels out at least. That's a fucked up car. I mean, there is some genuine self-delusion going on there, isn't there? I mean, she's just going to get out, look at the bonnet and the roof, and go, "Oh yeah, the tree must have bled all over my car." The repairman will be the hitchhiker. Ah. It's probably already there, working on it. There you go. So apparently, never pick up hitchhikers also includes on the bonnet. Particularly includes on the bonnet. Bet on the voice terrified you. Called it. I haven't seen this in a long, long time, so I completely forgot that pun. Mm. It's cheesy ass bloody Spurs. I tell you something. There is something about the bloody this scene. Although it's animated, it's like it's a the screams are kind of disturbing. Especially when you go, yeah, they're bullies and all that kind of stuff, but they're kids. Holy shit. cheesy end. Always loved this movie. Great watch along choice. Few beers, few laughs. Perfect. Solid direction. Good casting. Great fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's not. It's not quite as successful as the first one in many respects, but it is. It's still a good ride. It's still a good ride. It's the individual stories are pretty damn good. When The Raft is probably my favourite, but it is close with The Hitchhiker, and Big Chief Woodenhead is entertaining enough, and certainly bolstered by the by having some great actors in it. So yeah, nice segue into the next film. Yeah. So, get yourselves ready for the second film, and we'll get going with that in just a few minutes. Just take a very brief break, and we'll be back in just a few moments. It won't be too long. Alright, go get yourself beers and shit, or food. See you in a moment. Hello, back again. uh, where are we? Okay, it wasn't bad as I remember it. Better than the first one anyway, which I still say is terrible. How can you say the first one's terrible? That's sacrilege. Was good in the cinema. Thanks for the ride, lady. Is one of them, is the one. Yes. Are you using the Deadly Spawn video from the channel Horror Flicks? No. I'm just going to go with the one I've chosen down there. You please yourselves. Obviously, it might not be, we might not be synced up if you go with a different choice. But yeah. Okay. Get some thumbs up and to when you're ready. Just want to give you guys a little chance to do what you need to do before we get started again. And this is 82 minutes, this next one, so it's nice and breezy, and we shall get through that. Hopefully there won't be too many fireworks. There's been a lot of fireworks going off tonight. A little bit early. They get absolutely no respect for anyone with animals when they do that. Anyone ordered any blues recently? I got the Michael Murphy box in order. I haven't. I did get round to watching so got the amusement park appropriate for tonight that John Rennie very kindly got me for my birthday, and it's a fascinating film. Don't buy it if you're expecting Dawn of the Dead, because it's not that. It is a kind of PSA type thing. Lasts about an hour, and it's about aging essentially, and kind of. It was described as elder abuse. That's only sort of part of it. It's more societal attitudes towards people of age, and the challenges that being old has, and it's quite unsettling. As weather in England now, still warm here in Spain. Yeah, it's very mild, but it's kind of like it's very cloudy a lot of the time. Occasional rain. Did get a bit of clear night last night, but the good thing is it's still nice and mild, which must be upsetting certain Russian leaders. We've got a long way to go yet, though. So very mild winter. Yeah, hopefully, I think this year in particular, I hope it remains mild. I normally don't mind a cold, but given the situation, I think we can live with a warm winter for once. Not that it ever really gets that bad in England, particularly, but it can get cold enough to be a problem for some people, obviously. Okay, all lined up on the TV, says Iris. Everybody else ready? I think I stumbled upon the amusement park at my local library. Didn't pick it up, though. As a fan of George Romero, I found it quite fascinating. And it's a surprisingly effective film when it's talking about its subject matter. It's definitely worth having a check out. Like I say, don't expect like a regular Romero film, because it's not that. But although there are elements of Romero's kind of directorial style, it isn't the normal subject matter that he would do. But he's great at taking a big subject and making it small. And that's one of the things that is it's very powerful in this film that he does. Haven't put on the heating yet. No, neither have I. I think we've got maybe a few more weeks before that might be necessary. It's been bloody boiling where I'm living autumn time. It is not. Okay, right, folks. Let's get started. We'll if you click on that link, if you haven't done already, get ready to go, and we'll go on 5 and well, have a count of 5 and go and go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Now, The Deadly Spawn and Parasite is two movies that I always get sort of mixed up in my head. There's a rash of these kind of like killer mouth things going around. The smoke machine in the woods trope. I always find it amusing. And that's just the theatre kind of like, theatre tech side of me. Going, I wonder how they powered that cracker machine. I kind of want it to be the Blob at this point. Speaking of which, I mean, I am quite a fan of the remake of the Blob. It is one of those remakes I think is actually superior to the original. But the original does have its moments. It's actually not a bad film. There is a particularly funny thing. If you haven't seen the original The Blob, the theme tune to it is really kind of weird. And it's because it's so jaunty and so frivolous. Beware of the blob, it creeps and sleeps, burning up the wall. And it's like, it's just very bizarre. You see little elements in that film of what it was wanting to be. Don't get all the carob syrup all over the trees. What's wrong with you, man? Leaking a particularly high amount of blood. Was first aware of this when Fangoria did an article. It's like starting off like the Blob. It really does. The weirdest one is the sequel of the Blob films. That is a particularly ropey film, to say the least. I think the first VHS of this was cut probably in the UK. And to be honest, I mean, with the cover and stuff like that, the cover of this film would have definitely attracted some attention because it looks like it's going to be a scary movie, and it's of course what they were looking for. Remember in the 70s, BBC One showed the Blob in the afternoon and came home from school just as it was swallowing the Doctor. Scared me for years. They actually showed I'm assuming the remake, or the original. Beware the Blob, yes. Yeah, Larry Hagman definitely did. Yeah, it's very, very strange. The whole thing is a little conceived, and it feels like it's sort of stuck between two worlds. It's trying to be more modern, but also kind of like try to be the original film. It doesn't try to be the remake anywhere near as much, but it tries to straddle those two worlds. It's almost like they were trying to make a more wholesome version. But I mean, Beware the Blob came out was 70s, I think it was, wasn't it? So it wouldn't really copy and kind of like the remake or anything, but you can tell they're trying to be a little bit edgier, but without actually wanting to be edgier. It's a bit of a mess of a film. BBC One used to show a film in the afternoon before kids' programmes came on, usually as an old western or drama. On this occasion, they showed The Blob. The original, yeah. I was going to say the remake would have been a bit tough to show at that time of day. Yeah, the old alarm clock, yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. My stepdad always had this thing called a Big Ben repeater. Jesus Christ. How anybody could survive waking up to that goddamn thing. There's almost no point in wearing that thing, is there? Look at that wallpaper. The direction's going like she's like kind of like they're going right. Okay, look, no, you've got to go like that a little bit. You got to go like that a little bit. You're yawning. No, it's not that we want to see your tits. See, I'm not fazed by it. I've seen far, far, far more traumatic wallpaper from the 70s. What's with the half wellies? Does this guy have wellies for every occasion? He has like kind of full length ones, so has waders for the particularly rainy days, regular wellies for the kind of like just day to day kind of welly requirements, and little ones for wandering around in his basement. Turns out that's how he made his living, isn't it? He's a Wellington salesman. Really made it big when he sold a pair of galoshes. That's rubbish use of his own sweaty feet. You know what? It's like those cagoules and stuff like that. There's cheap waterproof jackets that are allegedly for hikers and stuff like that. And you get more wet from the bloody sweat than you would from the rain. Shadow Puppet Theatre. Kind of get a feeling they ripped a little bit of Evil Dead off there, didn't they? The Half Duke. Yes. Now you know this movie's actually going to go kind of like full tilt if it kills the cat. I'd love to have been on the production meeting for this scene. I'm like, yeah, we can't afford two aliens at this point in the film. We can't do like a kind of reproduction scene with the aliens, or they're kind of like splitting into two and that kind of stuff. Shadow theatre. Blew half the budget on Shadow Puppet, guys. Excuse me. I remember seeing the old Vipco VHS of this. The quality was appalling, very dark, grainy, and murky. Vipco, for all of their for all the things that they had, the titles that they had and all that kind of stuff, weren't exactly known for giving those titles an awful lot of love. It was pretty much get the film and shove it out there, and that really became glaringly obvious when they moved to DVD. And we've discussed this on previous streams, just how bad the DVDs were. They just really did not put any effort there. I remember the Slayer was particularly a particularly rough one. And obviously, he didn't need to do a heck of a lot when it came to the VHS and stuff like that, generally speaking. But a little bit of restoration might have been nice for some of them. particularly like you say, you get the dark and gritty and grainy kind of versions of this film, for instance. It's, yeah. In some respects, it was always part of the charm of VHS sometimes. And that kind of thing could actually save a lot of these movies because you didn't get to see all the seams of the crappy special effects on some films. The original VHS copy of Deadly Spawn is expensive on eBay. I think it needed to put more teeth on this monster. That's a cool effect. Mm 4K Blu-rays are the best for quality. Yeah, I don't really need 4K. I don't have a screen that's big enough. The biggest screen I've got is a 27-inch here, so... No, excuse me, 24-inch. Vipco used the same video master for authoring their DVDs from, yes. That's kind of how I understand it. Feed me Seymour. I think it's this channel has the original Little Shop of Horrors on it as well, which I have never watched to my shame. I am a big fan of the musical. I have a particular love for Steve Martin in that. The dentist in Little Shop, the musical, is just incredible. And his performance in that is just so wonderfully over the top. Didn't the guy who started Vipco sell the name? Would that explain the shoddy DVD releases? I don't know the chronology of that. Simon might know. But either way, I mean, Vipco weren't... I mean, to be fair, it wasn't just Vipco. Most of the video companies were kind of kicking a lot of this stuff out. They'd get the films from Europe, master copies from Europe, and they would pretty much just reproduce them. Obviously, you get generational degrading when you're working with VHS as well. So they would basically just kind of take a VHS, although good quality VHS allegedly, and then just keep copying it. Upgrading and the quality and restoration of films was not really a thing at that point. Not on VHS anyway. It's most of the time, the VHS quality was low enough that it wouldn't have made that much difference. Although that's not necessarily true later on, when the techniques for remastering and stuff came out. Really good quality VHS came out. VHS, when it was done well, was pretty good. It wasn't awful. A lot of people would sneer at that comment, now, because you got 4K Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff, but it's easy to dismiss those old formats as being kind of like archaic and stuff, but they were groundbreaking at the time. VHS was particularly groundbreaking at the time. It literally opened the way for an awful lot of stuff like, what I've got behind me with DVD. It's worth noting that, a lot of the major studios and stuff were not interested, or at least did not want to see VHS or home movies be a thing. So, or if they were going to be, they'd be charging you several £100 for the film. Wasn't the original Little Shop of Horrors a nudie cutie film? No, Little Shop of Horrors was. Oh, blimey! Let me just pull it up. It's got Jack Nicholson in his first role in it as well. So, it Roger Corman, wasn't it? I believe. I mean, it's the same story, but it was. 1960. So yeah. Yeah, it was Roger Corman. Oh, we've got a colorized version of it. I thought it was only in black and white. Go on, baby, whip it, yeah. It's astonishingly kitchen sink, isn't it? Some parts of this film. We had a bunch of rental stores. Miss those days. Yeah, I do. I mean, I miss the feeling of having those. It's probably not so necessary these days, but I miss the feeling of when it was all new, and you could go in there and it's just this unprecedented number of movies that you had access to. It was quite incredible. Is she talking to the audience at that point? Corman used his actual dentist chair. He rented it over the weekend. Corman is, for all the shit he will get for the quality of some of his movies, is one of the most important people in kind of Hollywood filmmaking history. The influence he had, the people careers he started. If he got 10% of all the money of all the people that kind of that worked for him are worth in their most successful kind of examples, then he'd have been incredibly rich. Vipco Slayer was the only DVD I've seen that had video tracking lines on it. Yes, it was rough as fuck. I do want to get hold of a copy of that. That's a good quality copy of that at some point. Lots of his horror movie covers were better than the actual movie, yes, but they were competing for attention, weren't they? That's why a lot of these films were looking so lurid on the covers, and why they attracted so much attention. The big one was always Evil Dead, obviously. That cover of the tramp getting drilled in the head, and that's a very brief moment in the film. A film that isn't particularly bloody. And a film that really I will maintain is essentially an art house film. I say essentially, no, it is an art house film. But Vipco sold it with that cover. And that dragged a lot of attention in. When you have that and Cannibal Holocaust, it's a very eye-catching cover that garnered a lot of attention. Yeah, and the SS films particularly were, shall we say, rather provocative. Always made you feel like there was going to be something a lot worse in it than is actually in it. Joe Dante, James Cameron, and even Ron Howard came from the Corman stable. Yeah, the guy's done so much for the movie world, and he's made some fantastic movies along the way as well, along with the shite. He's basically like an American Jess Franco in some respects. Um, does a lot of stuff. Did I say Evil Dead? I apologise. I didn't mean Driller Killer. The only store that sold hard to find stuff shut down after 20 years. There was a case, I think, where somebody was running a video store and he had, I think, Nightmares in a Damaged Brain or something like that, one of the really kind of controversial films. And the police raided him one day and they found a V2000 cassette. And bear in mind, this is, I think it was well after the legislation and stuff like that. So he had been kind of sat under there collecting dust for God knows how long, and it was in a format that no fucker at the time was likely to have. At least, you weren't going to go out renting films for it because it was a dead format for quite a long time. And he got busted for it. Yeah, as mentioned in previous stream, Corn was the youngest guy given a retrospective at the Cinématique Française during the 60s. Really? Okay. I think he's cool. It's wonderful, you get people in the kind of genres that we like, who have such a huge influence. It's always a shame, isn't it? It's usually with actors more than anything, where they forsake the work that they did with people like Corman. The people that gave them their break and gave them the chance to build up a portfolio, and it's like. Mr. Bryson made a load of Edgar Allan Poe films under Corman. Yeah. Make hundreds of movies like Corman, one or two are bound to be good. Yeah. It's often that way. Be it like Joe D'Amato, Jess Franco, and many others made hundreds and hundreds of films each. Some great films in there. There's a lot of dross as well. Because these guys are working, it's a career. They've got to put that money on the table, haven't they? They've got to put that food on the table, got to put the roof over their head. So of course they're going to do it. Oh, really, Kieran? I'd be fascinated to see that. It's interesting to see that people are kind of excuse me, growing to appreciate stuff like that. Do you like films about gladiators? Nice airplane reference. I'm wondering how John's been getting on with his Jess Franco exploration. Probably skip over the entirety of D'Amato's 90s career, since that was just a load of hardcore bouncy. Yeah, a lot of them ended up that way. They got older, weren't as able to kind of bounce around like they were when they were youngins, and just make crazy fucking films. Jess Franco was making a load of stuff right up until his death, of all sorts of different types of movies as well. As cheap as it looks being shot on digital and stuff, Vampire Killer Barbies is kind of an entertaining film in some respects. And they did two of them. I cannot find the second one. So it's a risk when you're doing interviews and stuff like that, is trying to make sure that you're not the one doing all the talking. That's why I prefer to have more of a conversational kind of approach to doing that sort of stuff myself on the occasions that I've done it. Corman is 96. Yeah, it's been around a bit. Oh, okay. Pretty good. I was talking about Jess Franco. Pretty good. Cheers, Glenn. Been researching a lot about Franco from what I've seen so far. A lot now. Nightmares Come at Night is still my favourite. Yeah, it's a pretty decent little film, that. You should check out 99 Women as well. The film, that is. Don't get too busy. And I don't know if you've seen Kiss Me Monster or Sadisterotica. They're both worth watching. And yeah, for the real kind of like early stuff, it's We Are 18 Years Old, um, which is a fascinating little film. It shifts so wildly in tone towards the end. Any of the films with Soledad Miranda are always worth watching as well. If this film were any slower and more pointless, it would be called Possession. But this is the thing. I mean, obviously, I grew up with a lot of these kind of, there's this sort of pacing of films. Certainly when you started watching kind of like VHS films and all that kind of stuff. They were so low budget that they couldn't afford to be kind of like just throwing stuff at the screen every 2 seconds, so they had to make these films because they needed to make it feature length. You could call it padding, but they had to sort of think their way around the problems, and it would naturally be quite slow running. Not to say the least, it's also kind of like how horror films were generally back in the day. Oh, really, Iris? No, I'd be interested to see which one it is. I still meaning to get like Rolls Royce Baby is one I'm particularly after. But there's a lot of Jess Franco films have been coming out lately. Just past like 4 years, it's just been companies itching to release them, which is great. Because they were hard. A lot of these films are very hard to get hold of. Fucking feed me, Seymour. Fucking feed me. It's the Uber Audrey, isn't it? I know, Simon, you don't like them. It's I think it's a shame because I think there are some really good ones there. In Mondo Macabre, some this is trivia. Sergio Garone, SS Experiment Camp himself, is also still alive. I thought Rolls Royce Baby was Franco. I could be wrong. Yeah, you're right. Always gets every time I do a search on Franco films and stuff like that, it always seems to come up. So I don't know if Franco actually had any part in it, because I know obviously Lena May's in it. Oh my goodness, Stiletto from Mad Foxes is in Rolls Royce Baby. Yeah, you bought She Killed in Ecstasy on your recommendation. It was excellent. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's such a good film. A real quintessential Franco. Um, Kind of the perspective of it is all very kind of psychological. Just this sort of dreamy, kind of nightmarish type world that this stuff happens in. Some right cheesy dialogue. You know that film way, way, way too. Definitely one of my guilty pleasures is Mad Foxes. Should have to do another watch along at some point, shan't we? Maybe it should be a Christmas one. Because I do sort of intend to do like maybe a Christmas Eve or a Christmas Day kind of stream. So it's way past my bedtime. It's an extra hour in bed tomorrow. Okay. Oh, icky, icky, icky. So that's a pretty good effect. That is a suitably grim effect. You could do some really fucked up sort of Freudian analysis of this movie, couldn't you? Last time I tried watching Mad Foxes was my birthday, wasn't it? I remember it not working, so we fell back on naughtiness of Calamity of Snakes. I don't know why that didn't work, but we can give it another go sometime. And you can all hate how much I say this is an absolutely terrible movie. But I still love it. I have the power over the toothy cock monsters. Mario, what big teeth you have. I think Mad Foxes only exists in a Russian dub on YouTube. What a shame. Russian dubs are the fucking worst. Yeah, it kind of takes a slightly different connotation these days, doesn't it? I probably claim that Hal is actually a hero in this because he's denazifying. Fucking Putin. What a cockwomble, as we say. These things are all a little bit phallic, aren't they? Just in a kind of nightmarish sort of way. I mean, seriously. Good Lord. See, professional surgeons always use kind of like just naked razor blades like that. They rejected the name the Deadly Willies. They do look a little bit kind of like, don't they? Somebody had walked in the office one morning and went, made a joke about cock monsters, and, well, this was the result. But yeah, I think you're right. It is a particularly tricky film to get hold of. There's been a couple of releases along the years, but very expensive and a little out the way to get hold of. And when it comes down to it, it's not, generally speaking, that offensive a movie, but not by today's standards. And it has its moments, but it's not that extreme. Excuse me. Dear, oh dear. Oh. I love the professional surgery kind of scenes in this. He's just doing the autopsy and the thing. You just like stab it a little bit. I mean, obviously the puppet. I mean, it looks fine, but it's not been kind of engineered for not in the same way as something like they did in Alien for the facehugger autopsy, which I believe was oysters or something like that, that they put in there to make it look all nice and meaty, fleshy type stuff. But yeah, it's like just a randomly cast piece of latex or something like that. They just put stage blood on. Not to digress, but there's a film dying to get hold of called Terminal Entry from Video Store Days. Anyone remember that one? I don't know that one. It's a shame that it never got a release in Poundland back in the early noughties. I got Unhinged on DVD for, well, you know, what. Unhinged is a really kind of, that. My God, that is a rough and ready film, to say the least. Decent idea, just really kind of drawn out. It has that vibe that's, yeah, feels very Amdram. I mean, Unhinged, it feels an awful lot like an Andy Milligan film, doesn't it? Probably slightly slicker than most of Andy Milligan's stuff, but only just by virtue of the technology. Browsing DVD shops, those are indeed the days. Always love visiting the UK. One reason being that HMV exists. Unhinged copies the opening of Last House on the Left, but then goes Texas Chainsaw / Psycho after he crashed a car. You know what? I don't remember a heck of a lot of Unhinged. I do remember bits and pieces of it. So I haven't watched it in probably, since I reviewed it. And Christ, that's going to have been about nigh on 10 years ago, minimum. And it just wasn't that memorable a film. But I do remember it having a real kind of Andy Milligan sort of vibe in terms of kind of acting that was involved, how it was filmed. Have you heard 88 Films releasing House on the Edge of the Park uncut? Well, it's about time it got an uncut release. It does have that somewhat dodgy moment in it, but yeah. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain. I don't think that still hasn't got a uncut release over here, has it? But that is a disturbing film. Not that it should be cut for that, but yeah, it's definitely goes. It's hardcore sleaze. It's in the best way. I wish GBH would get a decent release. I think the Cliff Twemlow stuff it's notable as a piece of British filmmaking. Just because, I mean, apart from anything else, the sort of cultural kind of aspects of his films are somewhat interesting, if nothing else. Wow. The chemistry on screen at the moment is amazing, isn't it? It's like the love between Sponge, Twixt, and Mop. Now we're really gonna work out. Yeah. GBH is so much fun. I did watch GBH too. Didn't make him as much of an impression as the first GBH. Nightmare on Damaged Brain was released uncut by 88. Was that in the UK though, or was that kind of like? Have a couple scenes shortened due to print damage that were in the Dutch VHS. Okay. Remember using that goon's face on my Facebook? Yes. Yeah, I mean, it sometimes can sound a bit funny when you say it, but it's there are cultural aspects of that kind of filmmaking. Apart from anything else, the time that they were making those things in, the whole kind of democratization of filmmaking through cheaper equipment and all that kind of stuff, was quite something. And I think he often made very heartfelt films. GBH certainly has a real heart to it. Okay. We watched the Ibiza Connection on a watch on. Right, okay. I knew I'd seen it. I couldn't remember it. I didn't realise it. Well, didn't remember it was on a watch along. Sort of jogged my memory now. Yeah, I did remember it now. A couple of senior. I don't know. Read that. I only seen Blood Rights by Andy Milligan. Not sure if I want to be subject myself to the risk of his work, but who knows. Andy Milligan is he's another one of those directors, much like Franco in some respects. In fact, probably more so than Franco in some respects. That you have to appreciate his stuff. You have to kind of appreciate a good portion of the body of his work. There are things about what he does, the style that he has, the approach and limitations and failures within his filmmaking even, that are quite fascinating. But it's more of a academic experience, I think, as much as anything else, or at least a film appreciation kind of thing. So someone like myself, probably someone like John, to be quite honest with you, I think if he'd find a kind of into appreciating Milligan's stuff. But I've seen probably about 6 of his films, I think. And there is something about his filmmaking which is quite interesting. He was a fascinating guy, not a particularly likable guy. So he isn't one of those sorts of people that you sort of go, oh, he was a... oh, God, that's an awful hand puppet. He's not one of those people that you sort of go, oh, he was a real struggling filmmaker, got to love him for that, He was often, apparently, a genuinely quite horrible person to be around. Some of that sort of translates into the film. And that sounds deeply unpleasant, but yeah, it's all part of the texture of this guy's fascinating career. GBH's definition of DIY movie, that's what makes it fun. How true passion in spite of the limitations. I fully agree. He was making films, certainly that film, utterly as a passion project. That seemed to be very predominant in the reasoning for making that film. Shame Cliff Twemlow didn't do more in film. He did a bit, but it's just a lot of it's very obscure. It's kind of out of the way. As much as I say that kind of democratized filmmaking and stuff like that, there was also kind of like a snobbery, especially when it came to kind of like, the medium of digital filmmaking. It's never going to get the critics, mainstream critics at least, frothing at the mouth, looking for more. The same way about John Borman. Seems to me you can understand most filmmakers from seeing a gallery of their work. Yeah, absolutely. A good filmmaker will be. Oh my dear. It's going nom 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 on her face. There are certain filmmakers who really do have a kind of character to what they do. Oh my God. Lots of willy monsters. It's like an Ann Summers party from hell. Always how these women's meetings end. Yeah. I know, they come in with all the good intentions and then somebody fucks up the flapjacks. The tea doesn't get brewed quite right. And before you know it, alien willy monsters are coming and eating you. Always the case, without fail. Get onto a Milligan retrospective. I wouldn't inflict that on anyone. Milligan is not easy to kind of sit through. It's work. Hopefully it's work that has some kind of reward at the end of it. But yeah. I mean, the Ghastly Ones is or Blood Rights, is probably one of his better ones, and for most people that's really hard to sit through. Yeah. So how many did he do? He directed 31 films. I have seen Vapors, and Vapors is actually, although it's a bit of a, particularly for its time, shall we say, a niche subject. It is about basically set in a bathhouse, so you can. And Milligan was, famously gay. So there's a whole kind of thing going on within that little movie. That a lot of people wouldn't feel particularly comfortable with. It's not explicit or anything, but yeah, it's very specific subject matter. And some of the aspects of his personality sort of came through in various films. And kind of seeing that sort of stuff is when you start putting the pieces together, if you know what I mean, it becomes quite interesting. Particularly with his attitude to women, stuff like that. Om nom 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 nom. Someone has seen Alien, yes. Let's be honest, though, there's Alien kind of spawned an awful lot of, no pun intended, an awful lot of rip-offs. Where's Charles? Check your pockets, for God's sake. Just have a look around, whatever. For all the faults of this movie, it has to be said that I love that. That's a shot that they actually kind of used in one of the Red Dwarf's polymorphs. But yeah, for all the faults of this movie, you know, kind of like how cheesy it is and all that sort of stuff, it's clear they were making some effort in it. It isn't just a completely shut out movie. It is one of those movies that is, you can clearly see it bumping up against its budget. It's a really low ceiling for them, I would imagine. They've done a fuck ton of work in this movie to kind of put as much into it as they can. Oh, hello, Kerry. Yes, Kerry, you're quite right, yes. You can hear the direction. Andy Milligan. Yeah, cut away, come on, come on. You got to remember, though, a lot of those films, particularly, you know, stuff like the grade of Andy Milligan's kind of level of filmmaking, they didn't have a lot of film stock. You know, so as much of it as possible would be one take. Not her. She was my favourite blonde in this movie. Oh, thank God. Was Milligan the director who would write Swirl Camera and was Andy Milligan the director? Quite possibly, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, the fact that he could actually, you know, complete movies and have these things sort of come out to the point that they still exist today. So this wasn't like kind of like something like Within the Woods, which you'd have expected to have disappeared. They were put out there for people to watch. It's kind of incredible in some respects, and I've never really sort of attached a value judgment to the word auteur and that kind of stuff, but in terms of, you call someone an auteur and you're immediately going elevating them somehow, and it's not necessarily the case. But for me, auteur is much more about the signature of the work, if you know what I mean, the director's signature. It's one of the ways it's sort of described as. So you can tell it's an Andy Milligan film, you know, despite what is kind of like presented to you, know, it could be shown to you anonymously, and you go, it kind of looks a bit Andy Milligan. God, monster. Just reading Stephen Thrower's stuff on Franco, decent writer. Stephen Thrower is very, very enthusiastic about Jess Franco's stuff. Yes, he's a very good source for the Franco stuff. I mean, before I started writing kind of like the stuff on Jess Franco, there was maybe three sources for stuff on Franco, really. There's Stephen Thrower, who was doing his stuff. It was like I'm in a Franco frame of mind, and a couple of very, very small blogs, and that was about it. For most people, he was pretty much ignored. Out the window with you, yes. Always thought Milligan was a 60s version of Ed Wood. To an extent, yeah. But probably a bit more mean-spirited. Oh dear. Oh dear, she's not done so well. When is Stephen Throw going to do his American Nightmare Part 2, Bucky? We'll have to ask him. I would love to chat with Stephen Throw about Jess Franco stuff. Surely a cardboard set of drawers will hold it. Yes. We've studied him. We dissected him. We must name them. They are the gob monsters. Or gobcock monsters. Or Latin gobus coccus. Well, Ed Wood ended up cranking out a few pornos towards the end of his life, so I guess he wasn't that different to Milligan. So many of the guys in their positions ended up doing that stuff, though. Like, D'Amato and Franco and Mattei and well, pretty much any of the Euro exploitation directors were doing some what could be charitably called erotica and some hardcore movies, that kind of stuff. Like I say, they were working. Highlander got her, yes. Stephen Thrower has a 50-minute extra on the new Franco release. Oh, okay. Well, when you find out, Iris, let me know. He is pretty much the go-to Franco guy, isn't he? So I really, 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 really need to do another Franco file at some point. I might make it the next one after this video is completed, which I shall say is completely written. I'm just going to edit it. Only thing is, I'm a little concerned about the ending because I kind of make a comparison, basically talking about some of the things that the Devils is talking about, then comparing that to kind of like some, shall we say, certain modern day politics in a certain country. I'm a little concerned about kind of getting that right, so it's not just coming over as, shall we say, bashing the US. So you can Milligan going to have to watch Blood Right Scarcity once, as I recall, review of Visible in some shots. Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely, you can. It is rough and ready, and it does look like an Andram costume party. recently bought Nine Lives of Wet Pussy, Pussycat by Ferreira, and his documentary Projectionist. It's great explaining legit directing porn was. Yeah, yeah. That sounds interesting, actually. The thing is, it's like the 70s. You got to remember, you had all kind of like stuff like Deep Throat and things like that, and you had the porno chic movement. So yeah, maybe like Wes Craven doing his thing, and all sorts of directors and actors and the likes that had been doing stuff. To be fair, it must have taken a lot of effort to get rid of paper total. I do want this particular monster to be kind of like singing, "I want to eat your face. It'd be so yummy down inside my tummy." He's got a mask of the Gorn from Star Trek. Because like now, as I understand it, this mask actually has kind of paint on it, which has lead in it. So I get the monster to eat the lead paint, and it will eventually die in about 60 years' time of senility. It's a very slow plan, but it is a plan. Head today, God, oh Jesus. I love the fact he just happens to have an extension lead in his pocket. I'm always. I was going to say shocked by American electrical cable systems. Horrified by them. I literally find that the extension cable in the American plugs far more horrifying than the Spawn. It's lovely seeing him blood wrapped a cloaked figure following a man. He turns around, a cloaked guy ducks, and the man doesn't even see him. That's the thing. Milligan's films were always very, very tight for time and money. They didn't have all the resources in the world, to say the least. So when it came to a lot of that kind of stuff, it was, yeah, shoot it, get it done. And I have no doubt that Milligan was also just, shall we say, not that picky sometimes. But then again, some of my favourite directors were often in a position of making a film that I didn't necessarily think was going to be a masterpiece. Come on, folks, barbecue cock mouth. Get your barbecue cock mouth. Are you a three prongs are better than two kind of guy? I think it is beyond any kind of reproach to say that the UK plugs are better than the American plugs. Far more secure in their fitting, far more safe in their operation and design. But don't get me wrong, the American plugs and stuff like that have evolved a little bit since then, but by and large, they're just not. It's not even a regional thing. I'm not just kind of like going, oh, yeah, it's clearly there's a better version. It just is. There's another one for the fire, yes. Oh, God. The mildly duff you up spawn. I love in the soundtrack as well to go, ooh, ooh, ooh. Very, very Ed Wood. Considering most of the world are two prongs, Lexi said there is nothing wrong with the American plugs as they kill Americans. That's a little mean. Now, suddenly I'm less worried about kind of like what I said in the review. Keep waiting for them to start singing good vibrations. They really are extending this aftermath scene, aren't they? It is looking more and more like the end of, like they're trying to do the end of Night of Living Dead. I do have to state for the record, I absolutely despise the Beach Boys. Wow, they're really, really, really going for like kind of like, oh, yeah, we're going to push it to feature length, lads. The Cage Cage Crusade. Dear, oh dear. Is he going to find a 20-foot one? The light's gone all kind of Argento, so I'm assuming something big's coming along. That's the biggest cockmouth monster I've ever seen. How much cockmouth monster can a man take? Oh no. Obvious miniature is obvious. Wow, that's a lot of cockmouth. Yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. I think The Deadly Spawn is one of those films that's always slightly disappointing. I always kind of have it in the back of my head that it's a better film than it actually is. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not awful, but yeah. Yeah, you can definitely feel they were sort of stretching for that for that feature length. The ridiculous Spawn. Yeah, it has its moments though, doesn't it? And you've got to give them some credit. They're really kind of going for it in terms of the special effects, and when they got a bit of an action scene, they're really trying to make it work. It's not 100% successful, is it though? But 8 out of 10 for effort, at least 8 or a 9 for effort. That wasn't dreadful. Bit slow, but fun when it got going. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation there, Richard. It's just a little off the mark, but you know, like I say, it is one of those films you can definitely feel it sort of banging its head against the ceiling of its budget. But other than that, yeah, there's some good work in there. But you do feel it straining under the pressure of going, yeah, we've got to make it at least 80 minutes, lads. Ride the worm. Tradies. Oh, were they ripping off Dune, you reckon? Dear, oh dear. 10.5 effort for me. Yeah, that's fair enough. Anyway, folks, we shall call it an evening now. It is very nearly the witching hour, and I've got to go out and do terrible, terrible things. Or go to bed. One of the two. But, yeah, I might be taking next week off. Not entirely sure. I will let you know as soon as I do. But I shall say thank you so much for coming along. I hope you enjoyed the films, as weird as they are. I spent an awful lot of time talking about Andy Milligan. And given John another thing to have to go research. Because he'll do it. He's very enthusiastic as our John. So, yeah. Take care, folks. And I will see you next time. I'll let you know as soon as I know when that will be. But have a good evening. Sleep well. See you soon.